morning. My name is Regina Brim, and this is a second in a series of roundtable discussion on legalization. Again, we tried to have, reach out and have opposing views, but hey, it's early morning, maybe somebody will show up, but we did try. I want all Mississippians to know that this roundtable and any roundtable that FroLiberty holds is a forum that all voices can be heard. This morning I have with me Dr. Allen.
Good morning.
And I have David Singletary, entrepreneur and businessman that is running as an independent candidate for the governor of our state. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for sitting down with me again.
Good morning, Joyce. Always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, we also have a live feed going out, so if you guys have questions or comments, if we can, we'll go ahead and address those. Okay, Dr. Allen, you have a rather impressive stack of papers in front of you since our last roundtable. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have in front of us?
Sure. The patent office is considered the holder of the truth, because if you get a patent number, that means everything in the patent is considered the truth. So you can't lie on a patent. So I brought a bunch of, and people don't understand that there's thousands of patents in the United States regarding cannabinoids and cannabinoid science, and probably thousands in overseas patents as well. The mother of all patents is the cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. It's U.S. patent number 6,630,507. It was issued October 7th, 2003 to the Department of Health and Human Services. So this is a U.S. patent held by the United States, and this proves in this patent that if you give rats cannabinoids, CBD, prior to causing a stroke in them, so they took a group of rats and they would cause strokes in these rats,
Okay.
and half of them would get CBD and half of them would have nothing. And the rats that had CBD, their stroke was limited to 50% of the size of the strokes that the other rats had. So 50% reduction in a stroke, and this came out in 2003, and there's been no human clinical trials on this. But based on this patent, they should have immediately allowed clinical trials on humans to determine if this was true or not. And there's been studies since this that motor vehicle accidents and people having major trauma, if they have cannabinoids on board prior to this trauma, that they come out better after the trauma. Their strokes are less and their morbidity from the trauma is much less.
Okay.
So this proves that cannabis is a medicine, and it goes against the scheduling, the CSA scheduling, that cannabis is a Schedule I medicine without medical utility.
Okay, so you're saying the same government that has a prohibition on cannabis owns patents on cannabis?
Right. So they say it has no medical use, but in the CSA scheduling, but then they have a patent that proves medical use.
Find that a little bit curious, and folks, all these papers and patents that we talk about on today's show, we're going to go ahead and make up a PDF and go ahead and upload that as part of the show later on. Mr. Singletary, you've been, dear God, all over this state talking about cannabis and your candidacy for governor. Can you tell us a little bit about, hell, your past 2 weeks, what you've been doing?
Been up to Memphis, South Haven, over around Corinth, and Tupelo, Starkville, Jackson. Yesterday did a radio interview with WYAB up there, and I believe their call symbol's 103.9, and then drove down last night to have this roundtable discussion with y'all this morning, and as the doctor alluded to, marijuana was made illegal back in 1937 through the Marijuana Tax Act, and since that point it's been criminalized and demonized by the political people up in Washington, and they supposed to be serving the people, but they end up serving their own interests. Therein, we've had our liberties taken away. Therein, there has been no research done to this effect on this miraculous plant put here by God, our Creator. And as the doctor substantiated with all the patents listed with the U.S. government, that they've known about the medical benefits of this plant, and they're still denying it to the citizens. And that's what's one of the main reasons I'm on this platform to run for governor of the state of Mississippi, is just to give me some of my liberties back that have been taken away from me by these regulatory authorities. And with the schedule listing, you know, it's just marijuana has been on Schedule 1, cannabis has been on Schedule 1 ever since they created that scheduling system. And with Schedule 1 scheduling, you cannot do the research that's needed to undo this. But at the same time, as the doctor pointed out, we've been studying this plant for 50 years up at Oxford, so we got the research. It doesn't matter that it's been beneficial to civilization for over 10,000 years, and ever since there's been a civilization, cannabis has been part of civilization. And what the doctor said just reaffirms the fact that the plant is made for the human body and will help us with many major diseases that we face today that is driving our health care cost up.
Okay. Well, one of the things I want to say is, first of all, I want to thank CJ's here in Biloxi for hosting us this morning. They set up a table for us, gave us awesome sweet tea. They have an awesome lunch buffet. So I hope that you guys will come down and patronize this. We're going to go ahead and take a pause and a break real quick, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. This morning we got Hustlman Live, internet radio worldwide with us, sitting in on the round table. You guys come on down, let your voice be heard. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hustlman Live Radio, freedomkradio.net. We're here around the world. We're broadcasting in 87 countries and 45 states. So they've been to hear what's going on with Mr. Singletary and everything that he's got to deal with, and the promises and the wealth and the growth that he's going to bring Mississippi.
All right, we're going to go back to live. Okay, good morning. I think we're back live. Okay, Dr. Allen, I wanted to go to you because I feel probably the passion is one thing, but the science is most important. I think that people who understand and are knowledgeable about the subject, I think it changes minds, and I think a knowledgeable voter is a powerful voter. So, Dr. Allen, all that hype being said, what can you tell us about, you use the word nutraceutical a lot, and homeostasis. Can you tell us exactly what you mean by those words?
Well, this is a new science regarding the endocannabinoid signaling system. And it's a communication system, it's a chemical communication system.
Okay.
Most people are familiar with nervous communication, so electrical communication, but this is a chemical communication. And your cells have to communicate with the rest of the body, and the way they do that is with these little receptors or antenna. They're a chemical antenna, and so most people are familiar with insulin binding onto insulin receptors and causing glucose to go into the cell. And when cannabinoids bind onto cannabinoid receptors, it causes major changes in physiology. And we're just finding out that this is the master control system for all physiology. So conception does not occur if you don't have a functioning endocannabinoid signaling system. So they've done experiments where they have CB1 receptor blockers, and when they block the receptors, sperm does not go into the ovum, and so conception does not occur unless you have a functioning ECS. And so cannabis can be eaten, and if you eat it raw, it doesn't get you high. And that's kind of what the government doesn't want you to know. And so when you heat cannabis, it causes the molecules to separate, and what's called decarboxylation of the cannabis. And when that happens, it does get you high. So regular cannabis that's not been heated does not get you high. And if you eat it, it has miraculous medical properties. There is a U.S. patent that entitled Treatment or Preventing Diabetes with Cannabidiol.
Wow.
And this is a patent that says preventing diabetes. So there's studies that show that if you smoke cannabis for 20 years or more, which is not the best way to use it, that the incidence of diabetes is 66% less in people that smoke cannabis.
And here in Mississippi, diabetes is what, like our number 2 problem.
Right.
I mean, diabetes is a great cause of amputation, stroke, kidney
Blindness,
failure,
yeah.
blindness. I mean, so
Which-
theoretically, I
which-
mean, this
which,
is a cure-all. I mean,
Which correlates to Mississippi being #1 in obesity, and most obese people probably have a higher probability of developing diabetes, I would say.
I just attribute that to we ate good-ass food, but that is a good point. That is a very good point.
So diabetes and obesity can be correlated.
Okay.
So your doctor can't give you any medicine on the pharmaceutical, any pharmaceutical medicine that decreases the incidence of diabetes by any percentage. So the fact that cannabis decreases the incidence of diabetes by 66% if you smoke it is a miracle. And no studies have been done on what percent it decreases if you eat it. They haven't done those studies because it's illegal for doctors to study cannabis because it's a Schedule I medicine, and so that prevents any doctor from studying this. And that's why there's so many holes in our knowledge about the benefits and adverse effects of cannabis. So this is virtually the only science that's been restricted by law. You can't study this science.
That's wrong, man.
So just think of the financial implication that introducing cannabis in our diet is going to have on the diabetic industry. If it decreases it by 66% when you smoke it, this virtually could destroy the diabetic industry, which means, and so all the complications caused by diabetes, amputations, dialysis, blindness, and heart disease, and all the other things, will decrease by the same percentage, 66% decrease in amputations, 66% decrease in dialysis. So this has a major financial impact on the practice of medicine in the United States.
Okay. Big Dave, as governor, I mean, the doctor spoke to it being illegal to do this research. How could you address that as our CEO of the state? And I'm not even talking about, nationwide. I'm talking about right here in Mississippi where diabetes is such a big problem.
Well, as you know, Mississippi is one of 50 states in the country. And if President Trump sticks to his word, wanting to return rights back to the states, then as the head executive officer of the state, I will be able to declare a moratorium or I wouldn't say a war, but in legalizing cannabis, it's been shown in the states where it's legal that their Medicaid costs are down 15%. So we will be preaching from the podium as one of my primary positions would be to legalize cannabis to help with the obesity problem and the diabetes epidemic that the state faces. And also, like I said, it will help reduce in our Medicaid cost and help in providing affordable health care to many of the citizens in rural areas of the state also. So as an executive officer of the state, first thing I can do is raise awareness, and I will just tell the police quit arresting people for cannabis.
Okay.
You
Well,
know, I'm the chief executive, I'm the head of the law enforcement officer also, so time out, take a breather, take a pause, just quit arresting people for a while.
Real damage being done out here, stop wasting our money.
Focus on some real damage being done out here, quit wasting our money, like Miles said. I mean, we've got limited resources. The federal government's already $23 trillion in debt, and nobody addresses that issue. So, I mean, we don't have the resources to continue this silly war. And legalizing cannabis just for the medical benefits. You show me something that has a 10% chance of curing cancer, I want it legal.
Legalize cannabis because it's wrong for it to be illegal, and it's a violation of, your human and civil rights. You're gonna take it from you. You know what I mean?
That's right, we try and get our liberties back
And
where it
that's
started
just
from.
plain and simple. It's just wrong for it to be illegal. It doesn't do any damage. It can't come out of wherever they're growing it at, get their guns and go to the schools. You know what I mean? It's not a problem. It's a benefit, and it can save the world in many ways, from plastics, clothes, building our houses, fuel, so many things that are way better, and it would end so many other industries that maybe should have never been, so people are afraid of how somewhere like here we live, they want Chevron plants to go up and stuff because that's how they eat and live, but cannabis can do a lot, it can provide a lot of jobs, especially with solar working stuff to power things, and bringing a whole new industry with that and stuff, and there's so much medical stuff doctors would transition to for that instead. It wasn't held back for just beneficial reasons to the government. And if they can't get rich off of a plant or a seed, then they don't want it to really happen. They're not just going to give it to the people. Just like with insulin, the men and lady who invented insulin gave it away for $1 each in their patent. Didn't do anything with the patent. So the federal governments and farmers took it, and now extort people like $500, $800 a month to survive.
Miles, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself on the
Introduce
line?
I'm Miles Meek. I believe cannabis should be legal because it's wrong for it to be illegal, and it can do a lot for us in many ways. Plain and
Okay.
simple.
And like Miles was saying, just give me my liberties back. This war was declared
it,
on me before I was even born. It was
Swear for
imposed
no
on
reason.
me, and imposed on Miles for no reason. We're locking people up for no
8 years
reason
of
and
my life
ruining
for
their
nothing,
future.
and
They don't
lose
have no
families and
career.
everything. Even if they expunge it all on people with cannabis convictions, if you've done time for it, you're not going to get your family back or your Christmases or anything that's happened. It still ruined your life, although the war on drugs has only taken maybe 22 officers in the whole time of the war on drugs, but billions of families are destroyed for nothing, and they're drugs that you should do life in prison for, and they're usually created by governments and prescribed by doctors. Your dentist is the one that's going to give you a gateway drug or alcohol at 15 years old. It's not going to be cannabis. Children being saved 100 seizures a day, 6 years old. You give them cannabis, and then all of a sudden they're well, hadn't had a seizure for 100 days, and they're not out the next week looking to score cocaine. It's not a gateway drug, you know what I mean? Tell that to the kids whose lives it saved them, you know what I mean? And it does this and works in different medicines and ways because of each medicine has a terpene profile about it, so they all do different things with the way they make you feel. And y'all look into that with your cannabis medicine. You keep a journal on how it works for you and what's best, because some things may be racier. You'd be like, oh, the only time I ever smoked weed, it freaks me out, and I ran around crazy, I didn't like it, I locked myself in a car or something. But that's because it was maybe a sativa racy strain that didn't work for you, but maybe you need an indica strain. So you try things and journal it and learn about terpene profile so you'll know how it's going to behave for the treatment you're using, whether it's ADD, pain, anxiety, you know, whatever medicine you choose to
Okay,
use
that
for
is a very good point. And doctor, I want to shoot over to you. Can you possibly explain the science of how cannabis can help people addicted to opioids? Governor Phil Bryant had a very, very high-profile press conference about 4 months ago talking about the opioid crisis here in Mississippi and talking about alcoholism and deaths on the highway. Can you speak to how cannabis, the science of how it could help people with that?
Well, cannabis is synergistic with opioids, so what that means is you can use less opioids while you're using cannabis. And so, in some ways, cannabis is an exit drug from addictive things. And it's a nutraceutical because if you eat it raw, it doesn't get you high, and it has nutritional benefits and medical benefits, and it doesn't have any adverse reactions when eaten raw. And cannabis regulates homeostasis, and that's the ability to stay away from death. So everything in physiology goes up and down. So your pH goes up and down, your glucose goes up and down, your testosterone goes up and down. Everything that you can measure, your respiratory rate goes up and down. If it goes too high, you die. If it goes too low, you die. So life is in the mid-ground between the two extremes. And so cannabis regulates this. And when you block the endocannabinoid signaling system, it causes dyshomeostasis. So it causes you to have more chances of dying if you don't have a proper functioning ECS. And many of the diseases that we currently have names for, like Crohn's disease and other things, will be renamed because these diseases are actually associated with defects in this complex chemical communication system, the ECS.
So in theory, if we as Mississippians or as Americans were given the chance to research, extensively the ECS, it could be a game changer for a great many diseases and just everyday ailments.
For humans and animals, they used to feed livestock hemp,
Okay.
and people would harvest. There's actually a patent on feeding livestock hemp and harvesting the milk and the meat with CBD in it. And so people used to have this in their diets, and it's no longer in their diet. And in the future, people will be eating this for breakfast. Grandma will be eating it and will prevent diabetes. The children will be eating it and will stop attention deficits.
Praise God.
And they'll pay attention at school, and they'll eat their lunch, and they'll behave better. They've actually have patents on calming animals that have anxiety states. Like, for instance, if you're moving a horse in a trailer, it causes anxiety, and if you give them cannabinoids, if you give them CBD, it decreases their anxiety and promotes the well-being of animals. So the future of cannabis is it's going to be in your diet, and it's going to be in all animal diets. So this is a new science, and we're about to make new ground with this new science.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to address, again, like I said, we did try and get opposing views, is people are afraid that if we legalize recreational cannabis, that people are going to be wrecking cars on the highway and just, nodding out in the street like you
It's
see
not
like
methadone, man.
Yeah,
It's
I
not a
understand
man-made
that,
poison.
but we have to address, like I said, the whole point of this
That's where the doctors come in.
is to address everybody's concern. And if I'm looking across at a woman who says, Yeah, my son used cannabis one time, and now he's a meth addict. You know, I mean,
We grew up on Adderall, probably.
I understand that, but like I
That's
said,
why he's a meth
we're
addict.
trying to have all voices here, all points of view. So what do you say to that person who's afraid that if we legalize marijuana, that it will devastate Mississippi?
Well, there's been a lot of scare about cannabis and driving and schizophrenia and a bunch of things.
Okay.
And 40% of all populations in the world use cannabis. So a minority, but a large amount of people are using cannabis on the road on a daily basis. And you don't see it. You just don't notice it. There's a study called Sexual Differences in Driving Performance Under the Influence of Marijuana. It's a U.S. study, and it proves in there, if you look at Table 2, that what they did was they had men and women on a driving simulator, and they tested their reaction times and crash avoidance ability, and they'd have dogs and things run out in front of the driver, and they would test their reactions. And they would do this before they got high and after they medicated with cannabis. And what happened was the women results were virtually the same, didn't really matter one way or another. But men had 1.1 seconds faster reaction times and had 3 times better crash avoidance. So in this government study, it proves that in some instances that you're a safer driver when you use cannabis. So, and that doesn't account for whether you're a new driver using cannabis or whether you're an experienced driver. So this isn't completely delineated, but in some instances, cannabis may be a performance-enhancing drug.
Okay, I want to kind of pause there for a minute. If we have anybody on the live feed that has a question for anybody sitting here on our panel, please go ahead and post it, and we'll see if we can get answers right now. We will also, at the end of this, of course, be thanking CJ's, and we'll have some individual interviews with people who have used cannabis, and talk about the benefits, some of the prosecution they've had to go through in their research to be okay and healthy. But like I said, this roundtable is for you guys. This is going to be on the ballot here in Mississippi. This is going to be something that we talk about. So let's talk about it. You guys have any questions?
So Regina, getting back to the doctor's point, as in my own situation, in my own case, I'm chronic pain sufferer. My back's fusing together. Suffer with degenerative disc disease. Mine was a young man, he'd got aches and pains already all over. You know, and I go to my pain doctor and they shoot me full of steroid injections and they prescribe me the opioid pills. And they say, well, if you test hot for pot, we can't prescribe you these opioid pills. And I said, well, that's crazy, isn't it? Because these opioid pills you're prescribing me, people overdose on them every day, but nobody's ever overdosed on marijuana. So therein, one of my liberties have been taken away from me. And the DEA, the regulatory agency, is getting involved in the patient-doctor relationship, which is where their nose don't need to be. Doctor-patient relationship needs to be held sacred. Even from government agencies, the DEA doesn't need to be holding the doctor's license over his head, you know, when it comes to prescribing their patients what their patients are asking for. You know, the doctor's in there to help relieve their pain and suffering and make them better. So the government is taking away your liberties through these regulatory agencies.
I would like to mention the CSA scheduling, controlled substance scheduling, says that cannabis is a Schedule 1, which means it's not safe under doctor supervision. And so this is a bunch of politicians that have decided that doctors are not smart enough to prescribe cannabis.
But isn't the first, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember my school, the first line from your oath is, and I'm gonna mess it up, is primum non lucere, first do no harm.
Do no
Am
harm.
I correct?
Exactly.
If that is the case, by hiding this and putting patent, isn't our government kind of doing harm? I mean, people that have seizures, people that have stroke, that have arthritis, that have diabetes, isn't that doing harm? You would think that the AMA would come out and say, that's
Exactly.
wrong.
Well, the U.S. patent, cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants, came out in 2003. It proved it decreased the size of a stroke by 50%.
When you say neuroprotectants, what do you mean exactly?
It protects the nerves from a reperfusion injury.
Okay.
And so, every person that died from a stroke since 2003 is actually a victim of the drug war.
Wow, that's some powerful stuff.
Miles, what's your take on this, Miles, what we just discussed about the opioids and the cannabis?
Man, the opioid's something that really should have never been. You know, cannabis could have done it all along, but they don't want cannabis to make it better. They don't want to fix anything with it. It's really too easy of a solution, man. There's not enough to it for them to just be billionaires on a damn seed, and that's the thing, you know? And yet, the government's taking a lot of people's lives behind this, but now it's their time to get rich off of it and do what they want.
Well, I mean, my cousin, retired Albuquerque police, died at age 49 from tumors in his stomach. And now you're telling me that cannabis shrinks tumors?
It helps
That he could
police and
still be
soldiers, too.
alive?
Yeah, could have been. My grandfather
My
could have
beef
been.
ain't with law enforcement. Law enforcement has been put in between a rock and a hard place by these laws that these legislators have legislated, but they don't even live in reality up there at the state capitol. Most of them are lawyers and privileged little rich kids, and they never had to deal with loved ones' pain and suffering. So the police need to be able to tell the legislators when a law is not enforceable or when a law is not working. And the legislators, in the best interest of the citizens, need to change these laws or get rid of them because they're invoking more harm on the public than they're doing good.
On both sides, the law enforcement side and the public side, that needs, you know, law enforcement knows it's wrong, man. Any dealings you ever have with anything with cannabis, I'm just doing my job, man. I'd rather see you with that than lower tabs, but I'm just doing my job. I know it's a stupid one, but I just do it. You know what I mean? And that's the predicament they're put in all over the country.
Between a
Just
rock
doing
and a hard place.
dumb stuff with taxpayers' money. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left on the live feed. So if you guys have questions, please go ahead and put them in. We're gonna have kind of a ending statements from everybody, and we'll include some after interviews that we'll upload later. But I'm going to look into the camera right now. Gerald, who is a retired law enforcement officer from Louisiana. We're going to be having another, hopefully a third roundtable. Sir, I am formally inviting you. I have reached out to both the Republican and Democratic Party in our area. I'm formally inviting you to the roundtable. If you don't feel that your voice has been heard, if you don't feel that we've addressed your concerns, I'm calling you. I'm saying, come on down. I'm saying, get you some sweet tea. I'm saying, sit down at this table and talk with your fellow Mississippians. Let your concerns be heard. That's what this is about.
Tables open to anybody.
So, Doctor, I want you to look into the camera, and I want you to tell your fellow Mississippians your final thoughts on this.
The discovery of the endocannabinoid signaling system is the single most important human discovery ever and will save more lives than the discovery and application of sterile surgical technique. So this means more people's lives will be saved by manipulation of the endocannabinoid signaling system than are currently saved by sterile surgical technique. This is so important for people to understand this new science that's going to save humanity and animals as well. And so this should be in our diet. It should be a daily recommended dose of cannabinoids, especially CBD, that doesn't get you high. And it will stop diabetes, it will stop strokes and heart attacks, it will stop irritable bowel syndromes and Crohn's disease, it'll stop seizures. There's no reason not to legalize cannabis, and many reasons to abandon the war on drugs.
Okay, we're gonna go to you, and then we're gonna let Big Dave have the final word. What do you
Miles,
want,
me.
Miles, I want you to look into that camera, and I want you to speak to your fellow Mississippians.
Fellow
Tell-
Mississippians,
Yep,
free the weed, stop with the evil eye. It's time to legalize, just legalize the weed, Like, they can do so much for us in so many ways. It's not about being first or last or what's gonna do what or ignorant minds. It's just what's best and right, And if your neighbor chooses to grow their own medicine, that's their prerogative. And if you don't, it's yours, you know what I mean? Just free will and liberty. Wrong for it to be illegal. Cannabis, health promotion.
Big Dave, you got the final word. Look into the camera, it's all you, homie.
Yes, well, as Miles said, the era of ignorance is over. It's time to step into the enlightenment. We're no longer living in the dark ages. It's time to step out on the limb in faith and know that history is our backer on this. I mean, my grandfather got shot and killed in 1931. He was a federal ATF agent. He got killed by bootleggers when alcohol was illegal. Well, now we know that alcohol is legal, so why was it ever illegal to begin with? The same is happening with cannabis in the country. Prohibition is falling off and cannabis is being legalized around the country. Now, Mississippi has historically been last my whole life, and there's no reason for that. It's either because of the leadership or lack thereof. Now, I'm not a career politician, but I will get into politics if I can bring a major new industry to this state and help my fellow Mississippians relieve their pain and suffering with this miraculous plant that's been placed here by our Creator. Now, I would hope that you would vote for me on November 5th, and let's change the direction and the persona and the attitude of this state toward this plant. Get this issue behind us so we can move on down the road. This will help our state in so many ways, confronting many of our problems that face us today.
Okay, well, I am Regina Brim for FroLiberty, Sammy B Productions. We're down here at CJ's in Biloxi. I hope you guys will come on down and eat. And I'd like to thank Dr. David Allen. I'd like to thank my boy. I'd like to thank
Governor
Singletary, and I'd like to especially thank and give a shout out to Hustlman Live Radio.
My main man.
All right, they came and sat down, and we will see you folks on the next time, on the next roundtable.